Okay, I'm going to step up. Let's look at this, okay? You wonder why we're so against Cuba. You don't remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia tried to put mid-range missiles onto the Cuban island. Mid-range nuclear missiles. This is history. This is fact. This is not delusion. This is not paranoia. It's been documented. There's been movies about that too. Okay? So why are we against Cuba? Cuba was also, before the fall of the Soviet Union, being supported by the Soviet government to the tune of $1 million a day. Meanwhile, we're busy selling our surplus that we buy at top dollar for less than we paid. Neither here nor there, okay? But you have to look at the mental state of the country going into Cuba, okay? Fact. Historical fact, and no Russian will argue this, Russians are paranoid. With just reason that they think people are out to invade them and take away their shit. It's been done again and again and again. You want to go back to Napoleon? You want to go back further than that? Napoleon on forward, okay? In the various wars. If it wasn't for the Russian Revolution, who knows how many people, more Russians would have died in World War I. Okay? But the Russians are paranoid. That's the way they are. They think everybody's out to get their shit, which is why they're trying to make as big a buffer around them as possible. Or they tried to. Couple that with the fear in America. When we blew up the bomb, that was the good thing. Then Russia got the bomb, and Russia had made it clear that they wanted to rule the world, or that was the perception at the time. You had the whole McCarthy-era hearings. Even one communist in the State Department is one communist too many. Ignoring the Constitution, but hey, that happens when people get scared. When you went into Korea, okay? Communist China was supporting Korea. Okay? People were afraid of communism. It was a real threat. You come out of Korea, you go into Cuba, and the communist revolution there for the people. And Russia was supporting that too. So, why do we oppose Cuba so much? Gee, I can't figure out a decent reason for that, aside from them trying to put mid-range nuclear missiles a mere 90 miles off the U.S. coast. No reason to worry about that at all, though, is there? The famed doomsday clock got ticked down, I think, 2 minutes till doomsday because of that incident, and resolving it backed it down to 7 minutes till doomsday. So, no reason to fear there, right? Now, the Vietnam War? No, we shouldn't have gotten into it. It was a war fought for the corporations, period. Case closed, end of discussion. The atrocities that were committed there? How many Vietnam vets have you talked to? Okay? You talk about Full Metal Jacket and what the other movie that was there, show you what it was like, where the My Lai was dramatized, changing the names to protect the guilty. Okay? Do you grasp that in so-called safe zones, there were children and pregnant women blowing themselves up to destroy Americans? The Vietnamese were xenophobic. Okay? There was no safe place in the Vietnam country for American soldiers to be. There were also per capita younger than World War II veterans and Korean veterans. So they were thrown into a hellhole, had no safe place to get away, and you had the whole social upheaval going on at the time too. There's a whole big ugly mess that goes with that. It's easy to point a finger and say, oh, you were evil because you did blah. Okay? You've taken the whole situation that was going on there. You just can't say it was wrong, period, case closed, end of discussion. It was wrong, yes. Okay? And Lieutenant Calley, yes, that was his name, got hung out as a sacrificial scapegoat for the media. Okay? The media was against the war too. The Tet Offensive, we won. But if you look at the media, we lost. Okay? And President Johnson at the time had a bad relationship with the media. As he himself put it, if he went out to the quad and walked on the water of that great pool there, the press would have reported as President Johnson can't swim. So, and all of that was to do what? Sell more newspapers. We've been in war for far too long as a country by the time Vietnam rolled around. Okay? We shouldn't have been there. We were in there for the corporations. What? Just like we're doing for Iran now. Okay? Your average schlep can't do dick about it. You can rail, you can complain, okay? But until the corporations are held accountable, until something besides war becomes the best way for economic growth in this country, you're going to have wars all the time. Look at the Depression and World War II. You want to talk history, you know. And Roosevelt was doing everything he could. WPA, this, that, work programs, putting the country in debt, coming up with Social Security so the older workers would get out of the workforce so younger men could go to work. It really wasn't doing all that much. What actually finally dragged us out of the Depression? World War II. Now you can say conspiracy theories there where Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor and he withheld that information so we could get involved in the war in Europe and the war in the Pacific and that whole 9 yards, and that dragged us out of the Depression. So, if you're going to talk history, learn it. Okay? The Iran-Contra thing, it was another one of those corporate things. Okay? It's been done for corporate America. There's not a lot you can do to stop corporate America because corporate America does what? Gives money to politicians. Okay? Jane and John Doe on the street do not give politicians lots of money so they can run campaigns because they have to raise X amount of dollars per day to run an effective campaign. And whose fault is that? The media. If you don't put a pretty picture up there, you can't do shit. The whole thing is more complex than you're painting it. And that's the problem. Okay? I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying there are circumstances you're not willing to consider. Okay? Why do we keep going against Cuba even now? Oh, that's simple. A lot of the dispossessed Cubans went to Florida. And they became successful businessmen and made lots of money. They hate Castro and what he's doing with Cuba. They hate that they can't go back there, so what money they can, they give to what? Political people. And they have newspapers, and they make lots of noise. And the politicians listen to the people with what? The money, honey. That's what it comes down to. Okay? Jane and John America ain't got squat to say. Who has the money? That's what talks. Money talks, bullshit walks. That's what it comes down to. Okay? We protest, we write our letters, and I protest the war. I don't think we should be in Iraq either. We went to Iraq to keep the American economy growing and to increase the Bush family fortunes. That's the only reason we're there. I really don't want to think we're there because Bush Jr. is in a pissing contest with Bush Sr. That's too horrible a thought to contemplate, really. So, but World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that in the past 50 years, okay? Let's go back, World War II is pre-1957, but we were still in the Germany and whatnot in 57. We're still there even now, okay? Stop and think about it. Russia really was a credible threat up through the 80s. Not a credible threat anymore, but the kind of mentality that built up over 30 years does not fade away quickly. Take in the whole picture, okay? No, we don't belong in Iraq. I don't want to be in Iraq. We need to get out of Iraq. But until Emperor Bush decides that we're not going to be in Iraq anymore, there's not a lot we can do about it. The current Congress can't just cut off funding for the troops and leave them stranded out there. They'd be crucified. And you'd be howling right with them. Men and women stuck over there. Should they fight their way out? Just, hey, we're 180,000, we're 150,000 strong. Let's just march through everybody and plunder and pillage and rape and take what we want. Well, wait, they're raping and killing now for no particular good reason. Oh, and right now, one of those little details that gets glossed over, which you seem to be good at that. The kids, and they are kids, just like in Vietnam, have been in a hot zone, hostile situation, for longer stretches of time than the people who fought World War II. Do you get that? That puts a hell of a strain on people. Okay? And you develop gallows humor. So they beat somebody up and they kill somebody and they're laughing and smiling about it. You know something? If I'm in that kind of zone and I've been there for a couple of months and somebody pointed a gun at me and I blew him away, I'd be laughing and posing for pictures too because it wasn't me that was killed. And I'd be real happy about that. Now, maybe they shouldn't feel real happy that they haven't been killed. Maybe they should feel sad they killed another human being rather than being happy that they weren't killed. Stop and look at both sides of the picture. You're choosing to see a negative side and put a negative spin on everything. It's more complex than that. It's that simple. So, there's my little rant. I'm not trying to denigrate you. I'm not trying to belittle you. I'm asking you to look at the totality of the picture, not just take one-sided view of things. That's not a reasonable position to take. Yes, atrocities have been committed. Have any atrocities been committed against the U.S. soldiers? Well, we don't really know that, do we? It's because that isn't really reported. We hear about ones that are missing. We hear about ones that, American soldiers that died. How did they die? Was it a poof, quick through the head? Whoop, he's dead now. Magically dead. And it wasn't nasty, it wasn't horrible, it wasn't disgusting. We don't actually get to hear that kind of stuff and how they died. We just know they died. Just like we know car bombs go and blow people up. So, there's a whole picture here that you need to look at. I want to know how those soldiers died. Were they brutalized and beaten the way Americans have brutalized and beaten Iraqis? Is that acceptable to you? That's a fair question. Who started doing what first? Or doesn't that really matter? You know, Americans should take the high road, and so what if their troops are brutalized, beaten, and killed, and dragged through the streets by their heels? You know, they're the invaders, and they're the bad guys, so and the Iraqis are just defending their homes. The Iraqis right now are involved in sectarian violence. They're having a civil religious war, or a religious civil war if you prefer. Okay? They don't care who they kill. Listen to some of the vets. I mean, I watch the news, I watch the Discovery Channel, okay? Keith Olbermann, MSNBC, had a guy on, a vet who was there, is out of the military, retired, okay? They're stuck, the soldiers are stuck in sectarian violence. How do you tell a Shiite from a Sunni? You don't. But you're in an area where you have to pay attention to who's going to shoot you first. And hopefully you shoot them before you get killed. So, stop and think about that before you go off so much. I'm not being unreasonable here. Have an adequate night.